Welcome back to the shop, everyone. This week's video takes place in 2024, week 50, 51, and 52. That is December 9th through to December 29th. And, you know, I know I haven't done videos for a couple of weeks, but I had some family in town, and then with the holidays, I just wasn't in the shop a lot. And so you're getting 3 for 1, you know, 3 weeks worth. And I think this video is only like 20 or 30 minutes, super quick. Had I done them individually, they would have been like maybe 5 minutes for the first couple of weeks. So it is what it is. But here we are. We are putting the passenger side exhaust back on since we have welded up the what do we do? I think we welded the flange on the header. Yeah, that's right. So that main pipe there, finished welding both ends. So we're just going to put it up in place, and we're going to make sure that the fitment's right. And we're happy with that because, yeah, I welded welded the clamp onto the muffler, welded the clamps onto both sides of that mid tube, and I think I finished welding the header in the last video. So yeah, we are going to just throw this back in the car. Yeah, I was so proud of myself that while I was doing this, I just tacked everything together. I made the driver's side the same as the passenger side. Before I final welded it, I was happy with the fitment. So I'm putting this piece on here, and I realized that the passenger side muffler, even though it's the exact same place as the driver's side, if I put this piece straight on, it's actually going to hit the crossbar for the diff. So I'm like, oh crap, so I'm going to have to fix that at some point in time before I continue on. But before I do that, I need to get the fuel cell fully mounted in the car. So what we're going to do is we are going to do a little bit of cleanup here. Alright, it is time to start working on this fuel cell. And I just want to say I am not a professional. I am not qualified. I am not certified. I am just a dumb backyard mechanic. So do not do any of the things that I am doing in this video. You really could, you know, blow yourself up. You could really hurt yourself by welding on a fuel cell, especially one that has had fuel in it, and this one has had fuel in it, so it can be a very, very dangerous situation. So I do not recommend doing what I'm doing. What I'm about to tell you, this is not like instructions on how to do this properly or safely or in any sort of way where you're not going to get hurt. This is just me saying what I did, and again, I do not recommend this. So what I did is I bought that meter there, and what it does is it measures particles in the air. It can measure O2, what is it? Yeah, CO2, O2. It can measure a bunch of different things, and one of the things that it can measure is LEL, which is the lower explosive limit. Now, my understanding is that the LEL for gas is 1.2%, so that's how much of a mixture is will create combustion. So what I did is I took my that orange boat tank that has had gas in it for years and years and years. It was in many race cars. So I used that kind of as my test case. So I opened up the fuel cap. I held the meter up to it, and the LEL increased pretty rapidly up to, I think, 5 or 6%, which means welding on that tank, you are absolutely going to blow yourself up 100%. So I dropped my meter in here. It's reading 0% LEL at the bottom. Now, gas can, if there's any, like any of my welds, if they're porous, gas can be trapped in there, and heating it up can ignite it. So I'm just doing the best I think I can. I'm pulling the fuel level sender out because there could be gas trapped in there a little bit. But again, like the entire time that I was welding on this, I was on pins and needles because, the possibility exists that I'm gonna, create an explosion. It's a very confined area. If there's any gas in there that does get out while I'm welding, it's potentially going to blow up on me, and I certainly don't want that to happen. So again, I don't recommend doing this. I'm just doing it because I was quasi comfortable enough. But yeah, I would recommend getting a professional to do it. And I am not a professional. But what I want to do is I just want to fully clean out the fuel cell. There's some gunk and stuff in there, so I'm going to throw some degreaser in there, throw some water in it. I'm just going to let it sit for a while. I'm just doing this for a little bit more of my own peace of mind. Even though the meter was reading 0, I just want to see if I can't get any remaining contaminants out of the tank. And, a little bit of water, a little bit of degreaser, not going to hurt nothing in the long run. Yeah, so at this point I've let it sit overnight, so now I'm just going to open the garage door, let it all empty out, and continue on. So with it all emptied, I'm just going to jump back into the car. I'm going to put this back on the original straps that I had holding it up. And I'm going to start figuring out my new mounting solution for this and just try and figure out how I'm going to do all of this. My initial plan is I'm going to do some round tube, drop it off of the, or weld them to the bars that go across for the suspension and for the cage in the back here. So yeah, drop some tube, weld a knot on the bottom, weld a little tab on the bottom of that, and then that will sit on some aluminum angle iron that I'll weld onto the cell, and that's how that'll all hold up. And I'll have a little bit or a couple of vibration dampeners in the middle, so that way the cell's not rigid mounted to the chassis. So if there's any flex in the chassis, it's not going to move or bend or anything like that, or crack the aluminum. So I'm just trying to figure out how I'm going to do this all. And I got to keep in mind, I've got exhaust that has to come up and over the axle and past the shock in the cell. So these are all the things that I'm kind of thinking about right now and keeping in mind. So yeah, I'm just kind of drawing out what I think I'm going to do. So that's that solid tab, or the solid bar with a little tab on the bottom. And then I'm kind of like figuring out how I'm going to mount this to the cell. Just all the different things that go into fabrication. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start adding a new way of mounting the cell to the car. So what I did is I bought a chunk of 1 inch by 1 inch by 1/8 inch aluminum angle iron, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to just mount this along the bottom. I've measured out the thickness of the vibration dampener, and at this point in time, you know, I'm just measuring and marking a line as to where I want to weld this. Just taking a quick look, making sure it's kind of gonna do what I want it to do. And then, yeah, just trying to make sure it's all squared and the lines where I need it to be before I weld anything or cut anything. Yeah, so as you can see, I've been kind of struggling with this a little bit, trying to, you know, make sure that I got the angle iron squared. And then I realized, Ben, pull your head out of your ass. You have a fab table. You could literally use this fantastic piece of equipment in order and, you know, just effectively bolt the cell down to the top of the fab table, and then I can use a couple of clamps to hold the aluminum to the cell, and that will be perfectly across the bottom, 100% straight, like everything that I was just spent like 5 minutes dicking around trying to do. Just use the tool that I bought to do this exact job. So yeah, just gonna do a little bit of cleanup and get the fuel, or get the fab table accessible. All right, so with this, I can get the cell on the table. I'm gonna hang the sump off of the back of it a little bit because it's the sump is pretty deep. So I'm just gonna take some clamps, clamp the cell down, not super tight, it's aluminum, so it'll, you know, if I clamp the top too tight, it might bend a little bit, but clamp it down enough, and then from there, as you can see, I can just put the angle iron flat on the table right up against the cell, and it's all gonna be flat. Don't need to dick around with marking a line and trying to clamp it and whatever. So yep, so I'm going to cut down this angle iron to the correct width, the width of the cell, and then we will just do a couple of tack welds. All right, here we go. Got everything held into place. The welder's on. There's no hesitating, or no, there's lots of hesitation. There's no going back. I got to do this. As I said, like the entire time that I started firing up this welder and started welding on this, like I was nervous. Because the last thing I want to do is, blow a cell up in my face. That would not be a good time. But fortunately, all of the due diligence that I did do so far has paid off. But again, I do not recommend you weld on a fuel cell, especially once it's actually had fuel in it for any period of time. I'm not a professional. Do not take what I'm doing as any sort of instruction or any sort of safety or anything like that. But now that I've welded a little bit, I'm just using the meter just to check the LEL limit again, just to make sure like no gas has or no fumes are accumulating, and like nothing seeped out of the cell that I was just welding on it. But yeah, again, I don't recommend you do this. All right, so now in order to get the bracket on the other end, because there's the sump there, I was sitting here going like, how am I going to make this work? And then I remembered I have these fantastic 3-2-1 blocks. And so what I'll do is I'll use 4 3-2-1 blocks. I'll space the cell off of the table. And on the front of the cell, I'll, just hang the 3-2-1 block past the front of the cell a little bit, and then the aluminum angle iron will rest on that. Gives me the perfectly flat surface. I can weld on this front bracket. Alright, so now that we got both those brackets tacked on, once again I'm going to throw the cell back up under the car using the original brackets or the original straps that I had to hold it up. And I'm realizing that my plan isn't going to work. And again, remember I said I need exhaust to come through here. So, and as I said, I'm going to have 1-inch round tube drop off with this crossbar that holds the suspension up. And so what I need to do is where I was originally going to have that bar comes down would be directly where I need the exhaust to go. So I can't do that in I guess that would be the front. And in the back I could have done it no problem, but it's not going to work in the front. So what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to cut off, I think it's 4 inches off of the end of both of those brackets, 4 inches off either end or 3 inches or whatever. Before I do that, I need to throw a couple more tacks on here. But yeah, so what that's going to allow me to do is have the 1-inch round tube that I'm going to drop off of those crossbars just be kind of inboard in the cell and give me clearance for the exhaust to go by it. So you can see I'm marking out where I'm going to cut. So I'll just quickly do a couple more tacks and then I'll zip those brackets down. So back into the car, we're going to throw the fuel cell back up. And so now I've got enough clearance. When I put the rubber isolator just kind of briefly up in the hole here, you can kind of see what I'm going for here. I'm going to drop a 1-inch tube down off of that crossbar and then just have a little like 2-inch tab come over to the bottom of the vibration isolator, and that should hold it up just fine, I think. So right now I'm just contemplating my next moves. But that is all the time that we have for this episode. So as always, if you have stuck around this long, I'd like to thank you for viewing, and we'll see you in the next one.